probably a bit what Carlos said as well. You try a lot of things and a lot of things didn't work. But then I would say since Zandvoort, we found a bit of a direction, I would say. And yeah, and then in some tracks it has worked really well. Some other tracks, we still have limitations, like here as well. We know that in long, medium speed corners, we just don't, that doesn't suit our car, basically. Plus, I think also the more like medium downforce tracks, that's normally probably the best for us. Medium to low downforce, for whatever reason. So yeah, that's not this track, and it's probably not really in Abu Dhabi as well. There's also some long corners there, but yeah, that's something that we of course try to understand more also in the future. Of course, I know that the regulations are going to be completely different, but it's still very important to figure it out. You know, what you have been doing, I don't want to say been doing wrong, but it's just something that you need to get better at, basically, and that's what we are continuing to do.
Anyway, regardless of that, we will fight to the end, mate. Fantastic.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. Really well done with the strategy, guys. That was awesome. Thank you very much. You keep staying in it. That was a very lovely race. You take that one. Great job, everyone.
A new internal FIA review has uncovered an unexpected detail inside Max Verstappen's Red Bull after his dramatic victory in Qatar, raising questions about how he turned a race he could not win on pace into a championship-saving triumph. The data shows a behavior in the RB21 that did not match what Red Bull had declared earlier in the weekend, forcing the FIA to examine why the car suddenly became more stable and more drivable right when the strategy window opened. This discovery comes at the worst possible moment for the championship because Verstappen now sits only 12 points behind Lando Norris with a single race left to decide everything. Before we reveal what the FIA found and how it could reshape the final round in Abu Dhabi, make sure you subscribe because this title fight has just become more explosive than anyone expected. Max Verstappen entered the Qatar Grand Prix knowing he lacked the raw pace to fight the McLarens. The RB21 struggled all weekend with understeer on entry and a lack of rotation in slow corners, problems that persisted throughout the first stint. Red Bull understood immediately that they could not beat McLaren in a straight fight and would need perfect execution to stay in the championship. Even before the safety car appeared, Verstappen described the balance as manageable but clearly inferior to the rhythm Oscar Piastri was producing at the front. The defining moment arrived on lap 7 when the crash between Hülkenberg and Gasly triggered the safety car. Piastri and Norris led comfortably, and Verstappen held third with no realistic way to attack them on track. What Red Bull did next changed the entire World Championship. Hannah Schmitz called Verstappen to the pits instantly, instructing him to do the opposite to Norris. Verstappen expected McLaren to cover the stop. Instead, both McLarens stayed out. Verstappen said on radio they are crazy, a reaction that captured how unexpected McLaren's mistake was. From that moment, Verstappen no longer needed raw speed. He only needed McLaren to complete their mandatory stops. Once they did, the race naturally fell into his hands. With one fewer stop required and tires in better condition, Verstappen inherited the lead, creating a gap that Piastri could not close quickly enough despite a superior pace. Even when Piastri began to fly in the final stint, the strategic cushion Red Bull built ensured Verstappen remained in control. This victory was not generated by the fastest car. It was created through perfect timing and flawless execution. The FIA's interest emerged from a separate observation. During the first laps of the race, the RB21 displayed the same instability it had carried all weekend. But after the safety car stop, telemetry showed a smoother load balance across the front axle than expected. This did not indicate wrongdoing but raised questions about why the car stabilized more abruptly than the model predicted. The FIA review aims to understand whether the setup change Red Bull executed before qualifying created conditional behavior that only appeared under race fuel and fresh tires. Radio messages throughout the race reflected Verstappen's internal battle. He reported sliding on entry into turn 1 but confirmed the car was manageable compared to the chaos of Friday. His engineer Gianpiero Lambiase reminded him repeatedly to protect the left rear, the most fragile tire on the circuit. As Piastri began closing with 1 minute 24 laps, Verstappen balanced tire management with defensive pace. Red Bull's guidance ensured he never pushed the tires into a danger zone, even as the McLaren closed the gap. The championship consequences are enormous. Verstappen's victory reduced the gap to Norris to only 12 points with one race remaining. Piastri now sits 16 points behind Verstappen, meaning the title remains a three-way fight. The mathematics are simple. If Verstappen wins in Abu Dhabi, Norris must finish fourth or worse. If they tie on points, Verstappen becomes champion due to a higher number of victories. After the Qatar shock, Verstappen arrives in the final round as the driver with momentum and the psychological advantage. Red Bull now prepares for Abu Dhabi with the RB21 remaining mechanically unchanged, as the team confirmed no further upgrades will be introduced. They rely entirely on setup optimization and Verstappen's ability to produce championship-level performances under pressure. The FIA investigation does not threaten his Qatar result, but it highlights how unusual the RB21's behavior became during the race. For Verstappen, the Qatar Grand Prix was not a demonstration of speed. It was a demonstration of strategic ruthlessness. That is the reason the world title will now be decided in a final head-to-head showdown that neither Norris nor Piastri expected. Red Bull began the Qatar Grand Prix with a fundamental limitation that shaped every decision they made. The RB21 simply did not have the raw cornering performance to match the McLaren's. Throughout practice and qualifying, Verstappen struggled with front-end push and an overall lack of rotation in the medium speed sections that define the Losail circuit. When the race began, these weaknesses remained visible. Verstappen's early pace showed a deficit that prevented him from challenging Oscar Piastri directly. Instead of controlling the race, he was forced into a reactive posture, responding to a car that was quick enough to stay in reach but not quick enough to attack. The opening laps confirmed that the RB21 needed multiple corners before the front tires reached an efficient temperature window. This delay affected Verstappen's confidence on initial turn-in, especially in the combination of turns 5 through 6, where the McLarens appeared to rotate effortlessly. Verstappen compensated with precision and patience, but these adjustments cost him small margins of time each lap. As a result, he found himself locked into a rhythm where he could maintain proximity but could not apply pressure. This gap between car potential and race demands became the root of Red Bull's strategic dilemma. The second dimension of the problem came from tire behavior. Red Bull realized early that the medium compound degraded faster than expected on Verstappen's car. The surface began to grain on the left side, forcing him to modify steering input to protect the tire. Piastri and Norris appeared able to push harder without dramatic degradation, which amplified the time loss across the stint. Verstappen had to drive defensively, not offensively, shifting his entire approach toward long-term tire preservation rather than pace extraction. Red Bull saw the trend forming and began preparing a strategy that could compensate for a lack of outright performance. The third challenge came from track position. At Losail, overtaking depends heavily on managing the final corner and gaining a clean run onto the main straight. Verstappen struggled to place the RB21 where it needed to be through the exit because the understeer forced him to delay throttle application. Each delay cost him acceleration, and each lost acceleration forced him to abandon potential attacks. Instead of finding openings, Verstappen found himself defending his position from the cars behind, a clear sign that Red Bull were racing with a package that demanded caution rather than aggression. Environmental conditions also played a role. The Losail circuit contained a mix of wind variation and high track temperatures that penalized a car lacking aerodynamic balance. Verstappen reported sliding mid-corner as the wind shifted direction, a signal that the RB21's sensitivity to load variations was limiting his ability to commit to high-speed corners. McLaren, by contrast, appeared stable through the same sections, confirming that Red Bull were managing a structural aerodynamic challenge rather than a momentary issue. Verstappen did not have the freedom to attack the track. He had to adapt to survive it. Communication from the cockpit made the scale of the problem unmistakable. Verstappen told his engineer that the car was sliding on entry and lacked full trust through the longer radius corners. Gianpiero Lambiase responded with instructions that focused on stability and tire health rather than extracting lap time. The tone of the radio exchanges revealed a team in damage containment mode. Red Bull understood quickly that Verstappen could not win this race through speed. They needed an external factor to create an opportunity, whether a safety car, a strategic error by a rival, or a shift in tire behavior across the field. The final layer of the problem was psychological. Verstappen has built his championship reputation on being in control of every phase of a race. In Qatar, he was not. The McLarens controlled the pace. The circuit controlled the limit. The tires controlled the strategy. Verstappen found himself waiting rather than dictating, an unusual and uncomfortable position for a driver who normally shapes the race himself. Red Bull saw that the only path to victory would come through strategy, not performance. Qatar forced Verstappen to adapt, stay patient, protect the tires, and trust that Red Bull would find the opportunity the car could not create on its own. Red Bull's engineering team faced one of their most demanding weekends of the season because the RB21 refused to behave inside its expected aerodynamic and tire operating windows. From the first laps of the race they saw that Verstappen needed to work harder than the McLaren drivers simply to maintain balance through the medium-speed corners. The engineers recognized immediately that the car was not responding to front-end load as predicted, and this forced them to redesign their approach mid-race. Instead of targeting peak performance, they focused entirely on stabilizing the platform so Verstappen could operate within a consistent envelope lap after lap. One of the earliest engineering battles emerged through tire temperature management. The medium compound overheated on the left side of the RB21, and Verstappen reported surface sliding that generated even more temperature. Engineers responded by revising differential settings and adjusting torque delivery to reduce stress on corner exit. These changes were subtle but essential. Without them, the tire would have degraded too quickly for Verstappen to remain in contention. Red Bull's engineering clarity ensured the tires stayed alive long enough to keep strategic options open, even as the McLarens built a pace advantage. Another challenge came from energy deployment. Because Verstappen could not rotate the car efficiently, he lost small increments of speed on exit that compromised his straight-line performance. The engineering team recalculated battery deployment zones to compensate for the weaker exits, adjusting harvesting points to help Verstappen remain close enough to prevent DRS attacks from behind. This was not aggressive strategy. It was controlled resource management, designed to keep Verstappen within a competitive window while preserving the possibility of a later strategic pivot. Wind variation across the circuit added another layer of pressure on engineers. The RB21 showed sensitivity to crosswind changes, which distorted aerodynamic load through the long corners. When Verstappen reported unexpected sliding, the engineers analyzed live telemetry to determine whether the issue was tire-related or aerodynamic. Their responses focused on guiding Verstappen through calmer steering inputs and earlier brake releases to avoid overloading the front tires. This approach improved consistency rather than speed, which was crucial on a day when outright pace was impossible to achieve. Situational awareness became the engineer's strongest weapon. When the safety car appeared after the collision on lap 7, the engineering group interpreted the moment with complete clarity. They had already identified that McLaren's race pace was superior, and they knew the only way to beat them was through an asymmetric strategy. The instruction to stop Verstappen instantly and to do the opposite to Norris reflected a team that understood the race could not be won through performance alone. Their anticipation of McLaren's decision-making, and their willingness to gamble decisively, became the foundation for Verstappen's victory. After the safety car stop, the engineers noticed something unexpected. The RB21 began to show a smoother aerodynamic balance, particularly across the front axle. This improvement did not signify any rule concern, but it did require analysis. Engineers realized that the combination of fuel mass reduction and new tire surface produced a balance state that had not appeared earlier during the weekend. Their immediate task was to help Verstappen exploit this stability without overheating the tires again. They guided him through a measured rhythm, ensuring he used the stabilized platform to build a gap that Piastri could not close quickly enough.